There was a ton of hubbub last week as Microsoft deprecated Windows 10 for good. According to Big M, you now have to upgrade to Windows 11 or take the chance of a potentially vulnerable operating system. Maybe you upgrade to Windows 11, maybe you don't. Maybe someone throws a brick through your window. How'd you feel about that? What if I told you that there was a better way? There's a better way to experience the web, there's a better way to live online, and there's a better way to compute. In September, I visited Berlin, Germany for the Nextcloud Community Conference. I've been a long-time Nextcloud user since like 2017 or something, and I was invited by the Nextcloud organization to attend their conference. And at the top of everyone's mind was how big tech like Amazon, Facebook, Google, and yes, Microsoft cannot be trusted. The phrase I heard the most: digital sovereignty. The ability for an individual, a state, or an organization to control their digital infrastructure rather than having their infrastructure control them. I lost track of the number of times I heard the term digital sovereignty in just the first few hours of being at the conference. And while most of the folks over there were talking about it in terms of, their nation or even Europe as a whole, you as an individual have a claim and even a right to your own digital sovereignty as well. The thing is, the big players in tech have a vested interest in robbing you of your digital sovereignty. Android, iOS, Windows, and macOS, they are all watching everything that you do, and they are auctioning off all of your data to the highest bidder. If you have a smartphone, you're probably constantly being pestered to increase your cloud storage capacity on iCloud or Google Drive. You're probably being bombarded by a constant cacophony of noise, ads and trackers, and ugly tangled mess that obscures the content you actually want to see and pushes you even more into their tightly controlled ecosystems that don't have your best interest at heart. And while I hear glib takes like, but I like having personalized ads, this really isn't about that. Sure, ads are an annoyance and they're part of surveillance capitalism, but it goes much deeper and the implications are far darker. Your browser, the services that you use, the operating system itself, heck, even your virtual keyboard, they're all spying on you. They're collecting your most sensitive and most personal data. And just as how an individual can be identified by their gait, so too can you be tracked by the sites that you browse, by the habits you exhibit, by the way you type, and even by how you move your mouse. And now, Microsoft is strong-arming everyone into using Windows 11 like some kind of mafia thug. But have you ever considered why Windows 11 has such artificially high system requirements that it's forcing families and businesses to buy new PCs? Especially when they really don't need to. These computers that they already have work just fine. And not to mention, while prices are at an all-time high right now, lest you run the risk of running a vulnerable version of Windows. Furthermore, Microsoft is forcing everyone to sign up for a Microsoft account with Windows 11. This means that they can collect even more information about you. This means that they can shove more ads down your throat, pester you with upgrades for OneDrive storage, and monitor everything that you do on your computer, including subjecting all of your usage to an AI. It all sounds insurmountable and scary, but I'm here to tell you that there are solutions to these problems. And all we have to do is put one foot in front of the other. And the first step that anyone can take is by using free and open source software, or FOSS for short. But you can think of it as community software. Now, recently, I wrote an article over on my website where I talk about picking a Linux distribution that is right for you and your computer. And I made a video about it too. To boil it down simply, if you have an Intel or an AMD GPU, you'll have good luck with Fedora. And if you have an NVIDIA GPU, go with something like Pop! OS or Linux Mint. And if you don't want to have to make a decision based on your hardware, Bazite's pretty good too. But how do you install Linux on a PC? That's what this video is about. It might sound like a task that's fraught with peril, but you won't be sailing into the unknown alone. This video is meant to get you started. So here are the simple first steps that you can take to install a free, open source, and secure operating system on your PC. Now, if you're using macOS, well, that's going to be an entirely separate guide, and you'll want to start by researching Asahi Linux. if you're on an M series Mac anyway. Though do note that Asahi is still considered very experimental, so your mileage is going to vary there, definitely. So let's start off with step 0. Back up your important files. Because no matter where you're starting from, you need to back up your files before you go any further into this guide. And I'm saying this from experience. The very first time I installed Linux on my PC, I accidentally erased everything on my hard drive, and I didn't have a backup of any of that stuff. So my recommendation is to buy a drive like this 14 terabyte Western Digital drive, or this 4 terabyte Samsung SSD. Now, these are going to be external drives, and what you do is you just connect them to your computer, copy everything that you value onto the drives. That includes your photos, your videos, documents, Excel spreadsheets, anything of monetary or sentimental value. Then disconnect that drive from your PC before you move on so you don't accidentally clobber that data. Great, so now you've backed up everything. Let's move on to the first step. We're going to create a bootable Linux USB. To do this, download Rufus. Rufus is a simple, stable, awesome application for making bootable USB drives. You'll find a link to all of these tools, and as well as a written version of this in the links below. Then you're going to download the Linux image of your choosing, also known as an ISO. As I mentioned, there are great options out there for you to choose from. Unfortunately, though, there's no great one-size-fits-all solution. But that actually is one of the advantages of Linux. There's nothing wrong with trying multiple Linux distros over the course of a few days or a few weeks. If there's something that annoys you about the first distribution you try, pick another one and give it a spin. Find one that you like. No, scratch that. Find one that fits the way you think your computer should behave, rather than having Microsoft force its dystopian vision of an operating system on you. Next up, you're going to need a USB thumb drive so that we can create a bootable disk. This thumb drive is going to be separate from your backup drive. I just want to make that clear. And it should preferably be at least 16 gigabytes in size or larger to accommodate the largest disk images that I have seen. Now, I use a drive that's not dissimilar from this Lexar one. All right, now that we have our USB drive connected, let's go into Rufus. You should see a device drop-down menu. Now, make sure you select the one that you just connected to your PC. And keep in mind that once you click the start button, Rufus will wipe all of the data that's on this USB drive. So back this up too, if you have anything important on here. Once your Linux image is downloaded, you can then click the select button here. Navigate to the directory you downloaded the Linux image to, and then select it. The rest of the fields should have the correct values by default. And at this point, you can just hit the start button at the bottom of the window. Now, depending on the size of your Linux image and the speed of your USB drive, this process can take anywhere from 2 to 25 minutes. I've seen it go a little longer even. I recommend using a USB 3.0 or greater drive with Rufus, as slower disks will take longer to create and will be slower to install from. Next up, reboot your computer. And here's where our paths might diverge a bit. Every PC uses different firmware, what's known as UEFI. Now, importantly, while booting, every PC expects a different keyboard prompt in order to boot a new OS. Common boot menu keys are F2, F8, F10, F11, F12, escape, and delete. And your PC might use any one of those, or maybe even not any of those. So while you're at the loading screen for your motherboard, you might see a prompt saying something similar to F8 boot menu, though there's also an equally high chance that you won't see that. If you can't figure out which button you need to press on your own, you can always Google the make and model of your PC if it's a pre-built, or if you built it yourself, you can Google the motherboard make and model to find the appropriate key to hit to enter the boot menu. A helpful search query might be something like Asus 10800XG UEFI boot menu. Alternatively, if the boot screen gives you a prompt similar to like F10 UEFI menu, you can hit that key to enter the UEFI and change the boot order in your BIOS, making sure to put the USB drive we created ahead of your internal drive that has your operating system on it. All right, I want to give a special mention here to Secure Boot. Most of the distros that I have recommended will support Secure Boot out of the box. And if you're not familiar, Secure Boot is a low-level feature that protects your PC from malware. but sometimes it can also prevent Linux distros from booting. If you've chosen a distro that doesn't support secure boot, you'll likely see a secure boot error like this. If this happens, then you can either try a different distro, which is the preferred way to deal with this, or you can disable secure boot from your UEFI. Given the variances across UEFIs I've already talked about, I can't write a succinct guide for every model of PC, so you'll again want to Google instructions for the process for your specific device. All right, so now we've booted into the installation wizard, and every distro is going to be different in this setup process, but they should all be relatively straightforward, at least the ones I've mentioned in my other article about this. First, you should connect to the internet. Now, I know Windows has trained us to avoid connecting to the internet during the installer process, but with Linux, you actually get the best experience by connecting to the net. If you've got a wired connection handy, use that. Otherwise, you can generally connect to Wi-Fi from within the installer. Now, in terms of ease of installation, Linux Mint, Ubuntu, and Pop! OS, I think, take the cake. All three of these distros have a simple step-by-step process that guides you through each decision that needs to be made, and there are only a few decisions that you actually have to make. Now, when you're installing Ubuntu, Linux Mint, or Pop! OS, I would be sure to check the Install Third-Party Media Codecs box. In Ubuntu's installer, they actually give you these options. Download third-party software for graphics and API hardware, and download and install support for additional media formats. I would recommend checking both of these, as it'll let you play MP3s, MP4 video, as well as installing GPU and Wi-Fi drivers. Now, if you're going with Fedora or Bazzite, you can follow the installation guide for Bazzite that I wrote a little while ago. Bazzite is based on Fedora, and the installer is identical between the two. Finally, there are so many Linux distros that I can't cover them all. Most of the installers are simple and straightforward. Suffice it to say though, if you encounter an installer that doesn't make it easy for you to set up your OS at your current level of PC literacy, you might want to find another installer to try, because that is kind of a bellwether of what you'll encounter when you have the OS actually installed. Great, so we've finished the installer, so now it's time to boot into Linux. Give it a test drive. Feel free to play around with it. Explore the settings menu, set up online accounts, install some of your favorite apps like Signal or Heroic Games Launcher, Alpaca, Discord, OBS, Spotify, Steam, and many, many others. And keep reading too. I've got several guides on the Bryant review that you can check out, as well as videos here on the channel. I've been doing this for over 11 years at this point. So there's tons of content about how to get set up with your favorite Linux distribution. And I think that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, found some use in it. If you did, hit that like button. If you didn't, hit that dislike button. I really love getting that kind of feedback. It's super helpful in making informed decisions about the next video I'm going to make. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to these fine folks over here who make what I do here a reality. All these guys are patrons or are supporters on the Bryant review. Thank you so much for all of your support. And if you want to become one of these guys, get your name listed over here, you can use the links down in the description. It's all greatly appreciated, and I'll see you guys in the next one.